Welcome, everybody. It's good to see all of you. Welcome to Reimagine's monthly Candlelight Vigil. My name is Andy Engel, and I'm Senior Programmer at Reimagine. I think it's time for us to do the candle lighting. So I believe the prayer is on the next slide. Yes. So I'll be stepping in for Brad. So everyone, if you don't have your candle, please get one and your matches. We'll light this together. By lighting our candles, we honor our personal dead, the dead across the world, and all of us still here together.
By lighting our candles, we honor our personal dead, the dead across the world, and all of us still here together.
By lighting our candles, we honor our personal dead, the dead across the world, and all of us still here together.
Thank you. Zubin, we can stop the slide share. So everyone, if you can, please hold your candle up to your camera. I just want you to take a few minutes to take a look at some of these faces, these beautiful faces. Shine your light on them, because we need a lot of light right now. Thank you. Okay. So now it's my great honor to introduce two of our guests tonight, and I'll invite the third later. Tonight we have two incredibly talented and gifted poets. Eileen Myles, who is the author of more than 20 books, including A Working Life, Afterglow, a dog memoir, Chelsea Girls, and I Must Be Living Twice. Their newest collection of poetry is A Working Life, published by Grove Press. They have spent over 40 years as a poet, novelist, performer, and art journalist. Their many honors include 4 Lambda Literary Awards, the Clark Prize for Excellence in Arts Writing, the Shelley Memorial Award from the Poetry Society of America, and Creative Capital's Literature Award. Eileen lives in Marfa, Texas, and New York City. Sophie Robinson is a writer living in Norwich in the United Kingdom. She is the author of the poetry collection Rabbit and is currently finishing her first novel. She teaches creative writing at the University of East Anglia. Welcome, Sophie and Eileen.
Thank you so much. Hi, Eileen.
Hey,
Hi,
Sophie. First, I want to really celebrate and congratulate you. I mean, I'm sitting in New York, also Lenape land like Andy, but Sophie is sitting in London, and it is really, really early or late, depending on how you look at it. So this is pure poetry heroicness to be here with us.
Thank you. And this is I feel like already like this is a really special space. I feel already like down-regulated and like this is a really like tender and intimate space. And it feels great to be in conversation with my friend of many years, Eileen, and their beautiful work. And we are going to be improvising slightly. We know what we're reading and we kind of know what we're talking about. But we're going to just see how it goes and rely on our years of friendship and our knowledge of each other's work, I think.
We're here to be surprised, I think.
Yes, we're here to be surprised. As part of the thrill, I think, of being a poet is to be surprised.
Can I ask, I mean, maybe just to start in a way, I wonder, can you say anything about what brought you to the moment you're in? Anything, like it's, cause we have our, some topics in mind and we have some poems in mind, but it's funny. It's like, it's real life always brings one most closely to the moment that you want to be standing in. And I wonder, do you have I'm springing this on you a bit, but is there a few things about how you got here today or in recent days that make today work?
You know what? Without being too specific, I've been thinking a lot about grief today. And I've been thinking about grief and transformation. I think you put the word transformation into my head earlier on. And I've been thinking a little bit about going through something quite difficult and emerging out the other side of it, and the kind of, to employ a cliche, as is my privilege as a poet, a kind of phoenix from the ashes moment, and how many of those one can have in life. And that when a bad thing happens, you have like a crossroads and you could go one way and you're like, actually, you know what? Fuck it, I'm going the other way. And that like, I think this is kind of like some of what I wanted to touch on in our discussion and in our work. But I think grief can be seen as a vulnerability, or even at its worst, a weakness. But I'm quite interested in forms of grief that involve like power, transformation, and like the sacred in a way. And that's kind of a space that I'm in. I'm in a bit of a difficult space, but I'm also in like a space of like, fuck you, transformation. And I'm also jet lagged and a bit ill. So I'm feeling very like otherworldly. How about you?
I mean, there's so many things. I mean, even as we were sitting here, I was thinking the really obvious thing, which is Pride Month. And I'm usually not a big pride person, but I think this year is sort of unusual, because I think LGBT people all over the planet are pretty threatened. We're really being told in a whole lot of ways that we don't belong here. I mean, the most severe, of course, Uganda, which is really intense, the kind of things that can and will be done to people. But, in the United States, the vast number of bills that have been legislated or being mounted against a queer, trans, gay existence, is just devastating. And I guess, it's like a new kind of challenge to find, to think about what kind of community you find yourself in, like whether it's intimately or globally or locally or politically, and it's hard. I was just in a theater space just before I got here, and La Mama, which is like an old New York institution, and somebody was playing the piano, and I suddenly thought of how many people have played that piano and who are no longer with us. And I'm thinking about people, people who passed in the theater community of AIDS, who were just playing in these rooms and are still playing in these rooms, so it's just like at a moment of loss, I feel like there's also this kind of coming together in this music and this power in this, um, in the pain and the precarity of it all, and I guess the other thing too, I'm in New York, but I was just in Texas, and I happened to be in Texas for there was a festival called Agave, and it was about the region, it was about the border, it was about plants in that part of the world and political realities. And one of the most amazing things that we did was we went to an Lipan Apache burial site right on the border, and it was a burial mound, a very huge one, which is quite diminished because it's in a sort of working class neighborhood where people just started taking stones and putting it on their lawns because that looked nice. And people who were of that tribe, or just like knew more than others, knew what the space was, but it kept being built in and removed, and and so I was there. Like, what was happening in the week that I was there was both a panel talking about the reestablishment of this burial mound, and also that the city of Presidio has given, small though it is, the land back to the people and back to the tribe, and they've found a big bunch of money, and they're not rebuilding the mound, but they're acknowledging it, and they're designing it, and they're saying what it is, and they're gonna kind of cherish and name and identify the space. And it was so moving. And then we were
Yeah.
we were all asked to, make these little prayer offerings for our own dead, and, I did it for my mom and I did it for, but mainly my mom who died in 2017. So I feel like it's been an awesome feeling of connectivity lately.
That sounds beautiful. And speaking of the crossroads I spoke about before, there are two directions I could take this in. One is to speak about your mum. That's one, and maybe some poems. And the other, I suppose, is to pick up on this thread of reparation and like ritual. Particularly, I've been thinking about that around the AIDS crisis and queer grief, and the ways in which the in the UK anyway, the alienating and vicious language around the AIDS crisis is coming back, directed at trans people.
Wow.
And it's exact same stuff. And it's the same media who were villainizing the LGBT community during the AIDS crisis are now like doing a feature on Derek Jarman, how brilliant Derek Jarman was, as if they weren't vilifying people living with AIDS. But at the same time, they're producing this transphobic bullshit.
Yeah.
Which direction would you like to take it in?
Let's do both, but I think I will say mom, because I think mom leads into poetry, and I think that we probably need to get some poetry right out there as soon as our mouths and fingers can do it.
Absolutely. Would you like to start?
Hell yes. So I'm going to read a poem called Lucky Kittens. And I think it explains itself. I mean, I love to explain poems, but then you're suddenly reading a poem and the poem is saying the same thing. So I ain't going to do that. So I met something cool and I can't shake it. I want to write a poem to the new thing. Nothing more trans than taking a shit in the men's room in a hotel. Also, I had a perfect breakfast and am well. I exercised. All good things. And once again, I'm flying. A world without mother is a world without me. I'm not crying, I'm flying. Honestly, I took my mother's tear from the corner of her eye. It happened when she died. I took it on my finger and I wiped it on my jeans. The rattling of paper is an exquisite disconnect, old-fashioned, all breaks, making space, always ready for a fight. My heat is instantly shadowy, like a moving hand, or sound, like no jazz at all.
Stunning. I'm going to try and not cry for this whole thing. Thank you. I love the way this moves, but I always am like, just there's such a kinetic, like dancey energy to your poems all the time, the way that you're moving through things. And I feel like to me anyway, I've only been reading this for like you gave me a copy last week, and the way that your mother is threaded through this, and what I already know and have read of your work, I suppose I was anticipating that in a way, knowing the way that you've talked about your mother before in your work, including one of my favorite essays of yours twice it's a beautiful essay at the end of it's at the end, right, of your I Must Be Living Twice. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you talk a little bit about the idea of types of poems and of returns to certain emotional states. And I remember in that, I believe you touch on, I think the next time I will return to this emotional state where I wrote these two poems, the third poem will be my mother's death.
Wow. I mean, I didn't even know where you were going, but now I do remember. I remember that. I mean, it's so funny to remember your own work and forget your own work all the time, But I think the loss of my mother, and I suppose I want to go the mother, I think is probably as primal as it gets in a certain way, because it's like she's not gone. It's like this person that you had this strange relationship with, where it was like, oh, I gotta call my mother, and somehow it was never resolved and it was never finalized. And suddenly she's gone and she's everywhere. She is the most embedded. I mean, she's just like the stone in the wall of the burial mound. My mother is place and mourning itself. And, and it's just like, even the poem, I mean, I obviously there's an enactment in the poem, which is that, I happen to be there when my mom died, and and this thing happened, which was the tear came to her eye, and I had to seize upon it. But then it was so weird because it was like the whole question of what is that relationship then? Is she's not my lover, you know what I mean? Or is she? You know what I mean? Like what? And so there was this hovering tear, and it was just like part of me thought you're supposed to put it in your mouth, and I thought, ah, like what all the feelings of recoiling and love and and then it was just like so like I felt so punked to wipe it on my jeans, but it was just the realest thing I could think to do. In a way, it was like bringing her back to earth.
That's beautiful, bringing her back to earth. And I suppose, I'm really interested in this, that like suddenly they're everywhere. I remember, this is not poetry related, but I was just speaking, I don't think you would mind, I was just speaking to my dad about this, who lost his dad a year ago. My granddad, who taught me everything I know about poetry. And he was saying the same thing, that just like he had this lifelong relationship, and suddenly his father was gone, and suddenly his father became everything. He's everywhere. Like they'd almost, he said something like they've almost never, that him and his father, like my grandfather, had almost never been closer. That it wasn't like they'd never been closer than in that year.
It makes me think of all these things like God and abstraction, and like what are those things if that's where the people that we have these conflicted relationships go, So what is that place? I want to hear a poem of yours, and whichever one feels, or you can walk yourself into the poem too, of course.
Well, I think I'll read a poem called Fucking Up on the Rocks, which is a line from a long Frank O'Hara poem that I love, that I think people don't talk about enough, called Biotherm. So Fucking Up on the Rocks is about it's a line from Biotherm. I love O'Hara. I love his darker work, and I think he is like wildly misremembered and misrepresented by a lot of people.
Can I jump before you even read the poem? You said something like that in one of our emails, and tell me about misremembered. I think that's like a beautiful word. It for some reason it jumbles in a nice way for me. What do you mean by that?
Okay, I think by misremembered, I mean remembered in a way that is different to how I think he should be remembered. So probably not misremembered, actually. Like remembered in a way that surprises me. I think as a poet, as an earnest queer, as like a sentimental Cancerian, and as a sober alcoholic, I relate to O'Hara on like a spiritual level, and I feel as though his poetry is really dark, quite spiritual, incredibly like coated in layers and layers of like doublespeak, and like it's always operating in excess of itself, and it's to me like a transcendent experience. And I feel as though the kind of the casual representation of O'Hara is often through like it's often as a kind of like there's almost a homophobia to it, even within the queer community. I feel like he's remembered as like with a cocktail in his hand, like walking down the sidewalk. He's remembered for the kind of iconography of celebrity, like Lana Turner, We Love You, Get Up, and for being like a fun drunk and a fun and like a camp, like operating within camp irony. But I think that beneath that camp irony is a real darkness, and it's like a version of like game recognizes game. I'm like that my darkness recognizes that darkness. And this poem was an attempt perhaps to address that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Let us hear it.
Fucking Up on the Rocks. Ducking my head under each wave on Fire Island, I try to think of other times I felt this done with life and survived. Frank O'Hara died here, everybody knows. Alcoholics die everywhere all the time, everybody knows. He was purple wherever his skin showed. I never thought of myself as a useless drunk. I never felt so unspecial. Through the white hospital gown, in the daytime, it feels like it would be easy to die, to dip my head just a second too long. But in the dark, death is real, like an animal up close. He was a quarter larger than usual. On the edge of sleep, you could fall straight into and through it, and nobody would know your name there. Naked in the Atlantic at midnight, cutting a path where the moon hits the water, I would swim in a straight line out into forever and nobody would stop me, would know my name. Every few inches there was some sewing composed of dark blue thread. I want to shut my eyes. I want to shut a million things. Strawberry moon, orange to silver, my simple tits bobbing on the water. Some stitching was straight and 3 to 4 inches long. Others were long and semicircular. Urge to die, breathing out and folding in on itself until it feels like nothing. We get out, shiver, lose the keys to the house, find them and laugh on the porch. The lids of both eyes were bluish black. Jameson drinking an inch of mezcal, and me sucking on my seltzer like it's a beer, alive, smiling, only half quitting, only half gone, a normal heart flashing in and out on the shore. It was hard to see his beautiful blue eyes, which receded a little into his head. The Wi-Fi is out, my 4G is fake, replacing each image in my recent life with a square and a question mark. I know, right? He breathed with quick gasps, his whole body quivered. I have taken a solemn vow to stop looking at your face on the internet, to stop imagining your unkind thoughts of me, of my life as a little nobody. There was a tube in one of his nostrils down to his stomach. I go to sleep in a wood-paneled room, the same length and width as my bed, and count the waves as they break over my head. I sleep like I'm already dead, face to the wall, greedy for the nothing, won't fall. In the crib, he looked like a shaped wound. I wake up constipated in the morning sun, drink coffee and smoke on the beach, feeling full of shit and good to no one. His leg bone was broken and splintered and pierced the skin. Every rib was cracked. A third of his liver was wiped out by the impact. I could make a home here, prone forever, belly to the sand, let my messages go unread, let my phone battery run flat, let the sun burn my back, let all the ships fuck up on the rocks. Indistinguishable, baby small, little pieces floating like the world floats, gay, unbroken, bloated and golden, a monument to my favorite alcoholic, the greatest homosexual who ever lived and died.
That's so awesome. That's incredible. You know, it's so weird. I mean, you're such a visual poet. Like, so all I get when I listen to you is pictures, pictures, pictures. You know, in one of them, I found myself drawing because it's sort of like you're making like a mask of this person. You know, it's a very simple mask, and it's, you know, it's sort of like he was a quarter larger than usual. It's sort of like it's creepy and it's scary, but it's just a ritual in itself, the way you're picking it up and shaking it at the reader, you know. And of course you're both kind of making yourself safe and making yourself companioned by being in that. And I've always, you know, I always loved that. Just it's very you know, my simple tips and, you know, being full of shit, and just it's like your own body is such a kind of like loose and compact thing, you know. It's sort of like it's poetic in its simple broadness, but it's like, you know, it's such a love poem that you're sort of in there with this guy. But also, I guess I wanted to ask, is it like the takes that the descriptions of his, I mean, I think you're taking from his condition when he was dying, right? Like, was it, I think it was Larry. Why don't you tell us about it, what it is?
It was Larry Rivers' eulogy. And Larry Rivers got up at O'Hara's funeral and just like, and I love it. And I can imagine being there, and I can imagine you being there, or like any of our friends who were at the poetry project with us last weekend. Our poetry family would be there if this was our friend. And Larry Rivers got up and just needed to process his trauma. Was just like, I just need to describe in graphic detail the condition of O'Hara's body. Right. And I think that it's a poem in itself. And I think that part of the reason it's a poem is that it's really beautiful and kind of horrific that everybody had to sit there and listen to it at his funeral. But it was like, you got to hold space for this person that's so traumatized that they just need to repeat it. And for me, it was almost like a reminder. I was connecting to the broken O'Hara at that moment. I was connecting to the O'Hara, because O'Hara died on Fire Island, but people don't talk about the fact that he died because he was hit by a beach buggy at going 4 miles an hour. He was already so unwell, is my understanding, from chronic alcoholism. That's really why he died. He didn't die because it wasn't a freak accident. It was somebody who was already really unwell. And that was the O'Hara I was connecting to, and I was interested in a femme version of that kind of like living, dying, disintegrating, like self-denigrating bimbo body or something. Yeah.
Right. And it's so, I mean, I think it's so punk too. And I think it was so punk of Larry Rivers to do that at a funeral. And it's so punk of you to pick up on it, you know. And I've got to say, you know, like I have a book which is totally a book of mourning, but mourning for a dog. It's called Afterglow, and it was like I had this beloved dog, Rosie, and you know, and I have to say, you know, I lost my dad when I was. I mean, I have the freakish um, honor of having been alone with both of my parents when they died, you know, for whatever that says about my relationship to my siblings and my family. I just happened to be the kid who was, I mean, you know, in one case I was, you know, my 60s, in another case I was 11. And I watched, and I couldn't handle, I mean, I just left my body when my dad died in front of me, you know, because I was alone. I was like, what does an 11-year-old do with a dying man making these wheezing sounds? And so I couldn't deal with it all my life. And then when I had a dog who you know, a dog life is 1/6 of a human life. You can have 6 dogs in your life, you know, and you get to watch the whole thing. You know, the puppy, the adorable puppy becomes an old man, you know, and you get to, and it was so many things. It was, for me, it was like going to the body. I mean, and that's another thing I want to say about your poem, but it was like, you know, such a ritual of the height of the AIDS crisis was going to our friends' ailing and dying bodies. You
Yeah.
know, the pilgrimage to the place of being there in the hospital, and who would let you in and who would not let you in. You know, there were so many kinds of death. I mean, we learned so much about death at that time. You know, we talked about who had a good death, who had a bad death. We talked about them like they were plays, you know. And I, you know, so I got to go to Rosie's death, and I got to be there for every minute of it, and I got to feel it, and I loved her, and I let go of her, and it was really how I got to live through my dad's death. It was just like, oh, I think I finally did that.
So Rosie's death was almost was a moment of like homecoming, like coming back into the body in death. Like it was a death where you could stay in the body.
Exactly. It was a death where I was adult enough and strong enough and willing enough and capable enough to not leave.
That makes a lot of sense.
Because that's the hardest part about death, is the ways we run from it.
Like absolutely. And I have more to say about that, but I think we should have another poem. Do you want to?
Yeah. And I'm torn. Here's my dilemma, time wise. One is longer and one is shorter. And where are we at? How are we doing, Andy?
We've got time, Eileen. Go for the long. Go for the long.
Andy, you're a cool guy. Thank you. Okay. And there's lots of this poem is called Jihad, which I'll say, when I originally wrote the poem, that was its title, and the first people who published it were like, I don't know if we can use that word. And I was like, okay, let's call it Wolf. And I retitled it. But when I put it in a book, I just thought, I don't know, I think it's a good, you know, so I went to my Palestinian friend and said, can I, he was like, jihad is a very beautiful word. I think jihad is an important word. So I smacked it back on the poem. And it's very much a walk in Marfa, Texas, where, you know, there was a lunar eclipse in Cancer tonight. Perhaps this is the start of the latest in my new breed of very bad poems. Rangy, leggy. Is this the night of the apocalypse? David's blue lights over there. I don't want any language to escape me. The tower against the sky, and a better guy than me walking his dog. My truck makes a funny twirling sound. Turn the corner, who am I? At that big blaring moon. The one that stays in, that reads stop sign. One red, two white, two more reds. Dots really in the mountains. I hear Doc over there, invisible. My dog, Soigné, in bed. I ask her, please. The heat here falling like a kitten in a period that's novelesque. It just holds all of this living. Are you writing a book, or are you just in your house? And I got to say, I tweeted that. I tweeted that part of the poem, and people were all like, oh my God, it seemed like everybody was just in their house not writing. It was really funny. It was like the wind laughing out there. Even the barcode say resembles the sky, and the sea Pat de Groot's bobbing vision. And I wish I bought you when. Mirrors stretch the light a little bit longer, even multiply light bulbs, a lid rolls, a reflection of power, a night of tiny things, homey moons. Will Masha tell how they did it, the boys who blew up Boston, looking for greatness, but it's just a spray of salt, lime, and thyme, the surface of a table covered with book open, ladling their knowledge to a non-reading pile of things. Other books, compared receipts. I don't know why electricity reminds me of my mother before the world was language and it only was attached to her, and the room wasn't. Everything was, so she owns the tingle now of language past. Maybe now when I stay in to be alone with my mother, new dark superstar, when she's gone and the world's full of holes. And this is it. I tell my love, I just want to live in my hole. And it's not even language now. I love the train, her wide whine. The whole damn world is her sign. My mother or my lover. There's not enough of me, but I'm sitting here to listen, warm to be in from the cold. Crack, says the heat. Man, did you hear that? I was saying that I felt nothing, and now I always want to tell you of my world. You become in your life her recording device, her ears and nose, her recording clock. I couldn't tell her a thing. The insult was so great. She had left this thing that was mine, a suit of clothes, brain only good for recognizing the unfathomable sound of the earth being pounded and producing wind, or is it my voice?
Thank you. I mean, I got to say, am I writing or am I just in my house?
What's that?
Am I writing right now or am I just in my house? It's like, I can see why people went wild for that. You know, what's even worse than that is when you go on a retreat and then you're just in a random place, not writing. And you're like, I went on a writing retreat and I'm not writing right now. I'm just in somebody else's house. And I want to talk actually a little bit about the grief of writing. Yeah. So I guess I had two things to say. One was the end of the poem, I couldn't tell her anything about that being its own kind of grief, like that poetry is almost, actually, you know what, maybe it's all the grief of writing. So like, for me, the great grief of writing is, and this poem reminds me of that, is like, first of all, the grief and freedom of knowing that I'm going to be misunderstood, like that I can't really tell anyone anything.
Right.
And yeah, secondly, like the grief of just like, you're always just like, it's always slipping through your fingers somehow, and it's always its own, and it always is operating in excess of itself, but like running away from you.
And it's very much, I mean, I feel like I often write poems as a message to someone, and almost invariably they don't get the message. You know what I mean? I give them the poem and they're like, I don't get that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some of my best poems were people I was in love with or I was in a relationship with, and I was trying to do something. Because a poem, in a certain way, is a very practical thing. And I was trying to do that thing. And they were like, I don't get it. It was like, and it is, I mean, I know at a certain point, I remember somebody saying that, you know, like at first when you're a new writer, you write for your friends. And then later on, you know, you'll do a reading and all these people come and they're not your friends. You don't know these people. I mean, but it's sort of like, those are the people you're writing for now. They are your friends. You're writing for the people you don't know, you know. And I think it's a political idea too. And this, you know, in the same way that in America, there's a big question about what the public means, you know, because people are so weird about their property and their tax dollar and stuff that they just like, they don't want their tax money to go to people they don't know. You know what I mean? And so the whole idea of the public has become privatized in America, and we want to know which public, you know, and which, you know. But the thing is, the most wonderful and generous thing is the public. The public means the people you don't know. You know, that's what power. That's what political power is. You know, you don't do it for. I mean, you kind of do things with your friends or your lovers, but you really do it for everybody, and you do it mostly for people you don't know, and you write for people you don't know.
Yeah. And you have no idea what's gonna hit, what's gonna resonate for someone.
Right. And when and how you'll be heard, you know.
And yeah. And I'm failing, I don't know about you, but I know I'm failing in my writing the moment I'm desperate to be understood and seen for like what I really am. It's just like, and so much of my teaching practice is about like the grief of that like, like a lot of workshop is about like a lot of my students workshopping their work at like in my like MA program. It's like And a lot of me talking to my agent is like, cut all this bullshit. Like, I don't care about all this detail. And I'm like, but you need to understand. And she's like, I don't care. And I'm like, but it really happened. And she's like, I don't care that it really happened. Like, I just want the feeling. I want the image. I don't care about the detail. And it's like, my writing is at its worst when I'm trying to be understood, but then like reconciling oneself to poetry, to abstraction, to lyric, I think is a radical acceptance of like the grief of being perpetually misunderstood, but that maybe it would be transformed into some understanding that I couldn't have imagined.
Right. And I think that's the gift of teaching, is teaching people that, to tear themselves away from their meaning, and let them, love the poem as this kind of alive thing that will mean its own thing, and even in a political situation where it's sort of like, as a poet, you're invited to read something that is to this situation. And what's so interesting is I almost never read a poem that is about that, but it's more like something else was made. It's sort of like, trying to catch a train and grabbing a jacket real fast, and you just grab the jacket that you grab, and it winds up being the perfect jacket, and I think that the poem that you read in a political situation is always the right poem, and it isn't usually about the thing that is like spot on, because I think poetry is just not spot on. It's kind of vague and generous, I think.
Yes. Yeah, and it's moving, it's like a thread that's moving through things, or something that's like something that's like running across something, not something that's, it's not the thing itself, it's the thing that runs across it.
I think so. It's like, yeah, exactly. It's like something's moving under the blanket.
Yeah.
Right. Do you want, I think you need to read a poem now.
Do I have time? Are we doing okay for time?
We are.
This is Mystics of YouTube. And I picked it because it's one of the first poems I wrote after I got sober, and I couldn't stop. It was the grief of sobriety for me. So I used to be a big drinker, and then I stopped drinking, realized I couldn't drink at all. Had to go through that realization quite a few times, and I got it this time. I haven't had a drink since I wrote this poem. And it was the grief of like, I had to close one chapter of my life, and the next chapter hadn't opened yet. And I couldn't stop getting in the bath. I just was like, I have to just get in the bath every second of the day. And I basically was like, I thought of the bath as almost like a babysitter. And then I kept going back to my childhood babysitters. I was like, I had a lot of alone time as a kid, and was thinking about that too. So I felt like this 32-year-old child who like could not stop taking a bath. And I wrote this, and it's called Mystics of YouTube. When you turn 32, the planets of the lovers are in the exact same place in the sky as they were when you were born. Mars return, Venus return. When you went away, I only kept quiet when I ate. Do I not even now have something in my mouth as I write this? A gummy void, a baby void, my consolations because I was love hungry. When you return, like the moon curving the earth, don't call me by my name. My milky folds, my pinky folds, my moony face. Oh, this trance I'm in. I left myself on red. Take a white bath, shave my legs to the top, consult the mystics of YouTube from the tub. Nothing lasts forever, so stay a little hungry. So let the void stay empty. So let the moon sway gently as it comes around the corner. My eyes get stuck on aurora. Everything returns so I don't have to. Moon now reflected in a wide and round reservoir of milk down at the edge of town. Further from the sun now, my winter of bad thoughts, my life in black t-shirts. I left me on red again, so I stay a little empty. Took off my t-shirt again, so I stay a little hungry. A little further from the sun again, so I'm watching that same film again. So I'm eating my same feelings again. Pop-Tart, peanut butter cup, marshmallow shish kebab, cheese ball pick me up. Nothing lasts forever. White ladies sing to me. Lorelei Gilmore, Rory Gilmore, Cher, Christina Ricci, Winona Ryder, Madonna, Madonna, Madonna. Hi, Mama. Return.
Oh, so great. I mean, plain straight up, there are just moments where it's like when you return, like the moon curving the earth, or as it comes round the corner, my eyes get stuck on aurora. I mean, like, why is that so great? But it's like astrology or something. It was like, oh my God, that it sees me or something. And it's all, I mean, all your poems really feel like there's just an invocation, like incantation, like they always wind up feeling like prayers to me. You know, I feel like you get out of the particular in this incantation way, and it's never corny. You know, it's sort of
Oh,
a,
thanks.
Hmm?
I think, yeah, I think maybe when I give up on having to, I think it's when I give up on being understood, I'm just going to repeat myself. Like when I give up on the detail being understood, I'm like, the feeling will be understood. And I want to circle back again and again to a word. And I like that poetry enables you to just repeat yourself in a way that like might feel tedious in real life.
and great end. Hi, Madonna, 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 hi mama, return. I mean, it's just like, you know,
Mm,
it's like a dance move into eternity. You know,
mm.
It's
Oh, my my childhood mothers, all of them, the real mother and all of the babysitters from Gilmore Girls and the film Mermaids that I watched again and again.
all deities, I think. you
Yeah.
know. So this is like a little shrine too. So where are we at? I think in our evening. How do we?
I feel like we might be at the end of our conversation.
That's what I'm kind of feeling.
We kind of began and ended with mothers, which I think is quite nice.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Mama,
a
mama,
full
return.
circle moment. Yeah.
You coined the.
Sophie and Eileen, thank you so much. Sophie, I'm always learning something new about the multifaceted nature of grief from these vigils and our different guests. And I just love what you shared about grief being misunderstood as an artist. And Eileen, I also appreciated hearing from you how caring for your dog was a way to process your father's death. And I want to also say how much I love hearing you read, because my family is from Boston and I just love that accent. I think of all my family from West Roxbury, Dorchester, and Arlington. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm from Arlington, so you heard it. I write in that accent. Thank you.
I'm going to pass this to Brad Wolf, our executive director, who's going to take it from here. Thank you both. We'll be beginning another section of our vigil. So Sophie and Eileen, I hope you'll be able to stay with us for the candle extinguishing blessings. So we'll see you back shortly, okay?
All right, thank you, Andy, and thank you to Eileen and to Sophie for the incredible conversation and your inspiring work and words and wisdom. Now we are switching gears to introduce and lead into our candle lighting, our honor ceremony, and each vigil we invite somebody special to really introduce that section, to share something with this community that begets the honoring that we're about to do together. And this week today and this week and this month, we have somebody very special to introduce to you. Nefertiti Moor is a green burial planner, grief loss supporter, and home funeral guide living on Lenape land in a city called Philadelphia. We've heard of it. She holds dear to her heart the fact that grief, end-of-life discussions and planning, and home funeral options go so underserved in the Black community. Through her company, Dearly Bereaved, she seeks to change that through dedication, focus, and action. In collaboration with Reimagine, Nefertiti is also hosting Reimagining Father's Day, a death meditation and life celebration on June 18th. And we're so grateful, Nefertiti, to have you here with us, so inspired by the work that you're doing in the world, and so aligned with you in the desire and passion for opening up these conversations for all types of communities, and want to support your work, and are excited that you're here with us to lead us to this, really the most sacred part of this experience.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here. I'm a little nervous, so my voice might shake a little bit, and I apologize for that ahead of time. But I really first just want to say I appreciate Eileen and Sophie for sharing that wonderful poetry with us. And the mentioning of grief, I kind of like how Sophie said earlier, I had like this whole thing that I wanted to say or talk about, but it's like I really wanted to talk about how grief, I don't know if a lot of you may know or aware how it's associated with the lungs. So I found like what happened with me, or what kicked off kind of like my major grief is I lost my grandfather. He and I were very, very close. And I was in college at the time, had to drop out of college. It just was like consuming me. And so I tapped into learning about the body. I was a science major, tapping into learning about the body, learning about the lungs. And I found that grief was associated with it. And so breath work for me has been something that has just been really meditation and breath work. So mindful meditation, kind of tapping into the present moment, and has been something that I've been able to tap into. So today I kind of wanted to, in honor for our loved ones, just kind of do, well, kind of something similar to what I'll be doing for Father's Day, but just like a brief, they call it death meditation, but I say grief meditation. So even if you don't associate with spirituality or anything, it's still a scientific association with what meditation can do for our bodies. You know, it definitely is like a healing method for us. And yeah, so if you all don't mind, just kind of get comfortable. You can keep your eyes closed or you can keep your eyes open, whichever you wish. And I also kind of wanted to, if you, in association with the lungs, I do chakra work as well. And I found that a lot of the, if you don't know what the chakras are, so they're energy centers within our bodies. But grief, the chakras that are associated with grief that are impacted the most are the heart chakra, which are right by the lungs, but also the root chakra. But today I want us to tap into the heart chakra. So it'll be a heart chakra kind of meditation that I'll be doing with us. So take some deep breaths if you can. In grieving, we often feel disconnected from our physical bodies, the emotional and our spiritual selves. So this disconnection is reflected in the disruption of the chakra system. Okay, so first of all, take a deep breath in through your nose. Breathe out through your mouth. Let's bring your attention to your breathing. Focus and visualize the air coming in and out of your lungs. Breathe in through the nose. Out through the mouth. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. And as you do this, feel your body relax. Feel your limbs grow heavy and grounded as you breathe. Visualize the ground and notice a bright ball of green energy at the very base of your spine. You reach out your hand and gently wrap your fingers around the green ball. As slowly as you possibly can, begin dragging the ball up along your spine and toward your heart. This jewel is for your heart. As you rise up along the spine, repeat to yourself the following affirmation. I take this jewel for my heart in honor of my loved one. I do not take this jewel to forget my loved one or in place of them. I take this gem to help elevate my thoughts, my body, and my spirit, to support myself in my grief experience. Repeat this to yourself and take the jewel a little higher along your body until you reach the heart. I take this jewel for my heart in honor of my loved one. I do not take this jewel to forget my loved one or in place of them. I take this gem to help elevate my thoughts, my body, and my spirit, to support myself in my grief experience. Breathe in, breathe out. When the jewel has reached your heart, bring your focus back to your breath. With each breath, see the jewel grow a little bigger. And if you can, match the rhythm of your breath with the rhythm of your heartbeat. With each exhale, watch the gem become a little brighter You are growing this gem so that your heart is full. The experience of grief is tough, but your heart still beats in honor of your person and/or your grief experience. Watch the jewel expand. As you come back to your body, you can open your eyes and breathe in. Breathe out. Whew. So if you can, in the chat box on the bottom or at the top of your screen, please write the name of the person you'd like to honor and anything you like to share. You know, in my culture, in African culture, we believe that you never die as long as your name is called or written. And to speak the name of the dead is to make them live again.
Crashes down, once lost, but now I'm found. You still comfort me. You still comfort me. But now I'm found. You still comfort me. The storm crashes down, once lost, but now I'm found. still comfort me. You still comfort me. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for these names in the chat, and to Nefertiti for guiding us through this part of the ceremony with the breathing and the gems, and thinking about our loved ones and bringing them back to life and keeping them alive through these expressions of our care and our honor. Yeah, it's just a really nice thing to be a part of, and so grateful to be with you all today, and to see these names and these expressions just scrolling back through the chat. Nefertiti, do you want to just lead us in one more deep breath, or a couple more deep breaths, now that we've kind of gone through this part
Yes,
of the
yeah,
ceremony? Would be so
absolutely.
nice.
And maybe we can say the mantra again. So just kind of loosen up your shoulders. Something that I find too is there's a kind of head thing that I do, because I find that a lot of us don't, the world is just so busy, you know, kind of when you do your neck like this, stop right here. And then it kind of loosens you up, you know. Take that time, take some deep breaths in through your nose, out through your mouth, in through your nose, out through your mouth. And something else I kind of just wanted to share before I do the mantra is with, you know, grief being so associated with that heart chakra. Some ways to kind of help heal that is associated with the color green. You can do some mindful meditation, guided meditation. You can eat green foods, go out in nature. And sometimes I find if I take my 2 fingers and tap on my heart when I'm having like a grief trigger, if you guys probably all know what that is, can happen at any given moment, at any given time. You think of your loved one or your experience, and it just kind of shakes you up. And I have to just, you know, stay in my moment, do some breath work, and tap my heart with my fingers. So just to go over that mantra again, you all, as we breathe. Breathe in. I take this jewel for my heart in honor of my loved one. I do not take this jewel to forget my loved one or in place of them. I take this gem to help elevate my thoughts, my body, and my spirit, to support myself and my grief experience. Breathe in and out. How is everyone feeling?
I agree with what Andy's or Reimagine put in the chat. Nefertiti is a gem. That is so
Thank
nice,
you.
and so loving, and so spacious and healing. So I think that's the perfect time, you know, for all of us to turn back to our candles. And Zubin, if you want to put the prayer up on the screen, we want to invite Nefertiti, Eileen, and Sophie to help guide us through this candle extinguishing prayer. And I would like to just share with everybody that some people, you know, this is just an invitation. There's no edict. If you have lit a candle and you would like to keep the flame alive, or maybe alive is not the right word, but keep it going, and don't feel like blowing it out with us here, that's okay. And also, if you don't have a candle, another offering could be when we get to the part at the end of these 3 blessings, and we count to 3 and extinguish our candles, we can also use that as an opportunity to take a deep breath and exhale our love out into the world. So there's a couple invitations for everybody, depending on where you are, to just be as you feel called in this moment. And with that in mind, though, I'd like to invite, yes, Nefertiti, Eileen, and Sophie to read this blessing 3 times. And wherever you are, you're invited also to read these words out loud, and we can all speak this together in our own space.
Okay. You all ready?
Yeah.
Okay. By extinguishing our candles, we release light into our world by keep alive the memories of those we honor today,
Today and
tomorrow, and for the rest of our lives. By extinguishing our candles, we release light into our world to keep alive the memories of those we honor today and tomorrow, and for the rest of our lives. By extinguishing our candles, we release light into our world to keep alive the memories of those we honor today and tomorrow, and for the rest of our lives.
Beautiful. And it was a perfect invitation for all of you to join together, and wherever, Nefertiti and Eileen and Sophie, thank you so much as a group there. And now on the count of three, we can release that light. So 3, 2, 1. So thank you, everybody. And now I'd like to call back Andy, who can share a little bit about what's coming up and what's next for Reimagine as we continue hosting these literally hundreds and hundreds, over 3,000 events we've hosted now since the pandemic online to create community for people like us who want to get together and talk about, reflect on, and process these hard experiences of life, but also transform, transmute, and channel them into love and action and positivity and joy and connection. So, Andy.
So our next event is on June 13th. It's our COVID grief gathering. These have been occurring monthly, and it's a welcoming drop-in space for all those experiencing specific losses as a result of the pandemic. And it's the second Tuesday of every month. And our facilitator is Tony Pham, also known in spiritual spaces as Butterfly. Anyone who was at the AAPI Grief Circle last week can attest to Tony's beautiful skills as a facilitator. He's a heritage Buddhist, a child of Vietnamese refugees, and also a gifted healer. So I hope you can join us for that, or if you know someone who has had a loss specific to COVID, please encourage them to join. Next up, we have another monthly gathering called Room for Grief. It is a peer-led gathering similar to the COVID grief gathering, and it takes place every third Thursday of the month. And we hold space for those mourning all kinds of loss using art, creativity, and prompts. Our facilitator is Michelle Thornhill Colwell. So I hope you can join us. And on June 15th, we have an event that precedes Juneteenth. It's a time to anticipate and reflect on this holiday. Dion Monsanto and Dr. Corinne Glover will imagine and reimagine freedom at this gathering. So please join us for that. And then, of course, we have our Father's Day event with Nefertiti. So come on Sunday, June 18th to honor our fathers, our father figures, and ancestors. Nefertiti will lead a death meditation and living funeral ceremony. You got a sneak peek today, so join us for that. And finally, our next monthly vigil will be on July 5th. We're featuring two guests, author Nicole Chung, who will discuss her new memoir about navigating grief and rage and making sense of the lives of her adoptive parents. Nicole is Korean American. We'll also hear stories and music from saxophonist Jimmy Green. His daughter, Anna Grace, was killed at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut over a decade ago. He's a gifted musician and a gifted speaker, so I hope you'll join us for the next vigil.
So it looks like we can close down that, and just, we have a couple minutes, and we still have Nefertiti and Sophie and Eileen with us. I'm curious. Well, first of all, Eileen and Sophie and Nefertiti, if any of you want to share any reflections about this space and really this work that we're all doing together by showing up. Now that we've kind of come through this ceremony, I want to offer you the chance to reflect on anything. And if anyone has any questions for them, or any questions whatsoever, or wants to share something that came up for you during the ceremony, that we can also encourage or invite any of that. So first, I want to turn it over to our speakers and see if you have any reflections at this point in the proceedings.
I only
Eileen.
want to say how grateful I am. This has been very sweet and heartening and just, I mean, surprising. I don't know, in that, I was happy to be invited, and I didn't really know what it was, and I've put in what felt like the things to add to the space, and I feel like there's been so much more than what I don't know what I envisioned. And Nefertiti, I'm just blown away by your practice was so kind of direct and clear and simple and lit, and I just feel. And also, I've got to ask you. I have a plan to have a green burial, and I feel like I'm going to go bother you in the future.
Please do.
I mean, it's like mourning is real and dying is real, and it's sort of like I think it's really worth thinking about how you want that to be, and that's like been a missing link for me, and I really would love to talk to you about it sometime. So I feel very lucky on so many levels to have been invited here tonight.
Yes, I agree. I feel like it's all divine. And yes, if you want to connect about green burials, it's such a passion for me, because it's just, if you go back far enough into every culture, you'll find that's what we were doing anyway. And now I just feel like, unfortunately, people don't know that it's a choice. They don't know, that the funeral, not all funeral homes, but most funeral homes they don't give you that option, a lot of them. So, but they can if you ask. And I just really think that today was beautiful. And right after this, I'm going to put my son down to sleep, and I just feel so at peace and so just like happy. And I'm glad that I was invited. I'm glad that all of you people were here to join us, and I hope that you all will be here for the Father's Day event. But if not, hope that we connect again soon, because this was nice.
Sophie, if you're still on board, I just want to thank you so much for doing this. And it's very generous, and you have been great for a long time, and you continue to be great. I'm really happy you were here tonight.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. This has been really beautiful. I've been like sort of torn between wanting to Nefertiti, that was such a beautiful ceremony that I found myself wanting to be torn between like going in and then being like, oh, I am actually still like I want to cry on camera. Also, my son is making an appearance. My old man. In the background, he's waiting to be lit in. But this was really beautiful, and thank you for just bringing home, like the place that grief and death have in our lives, and we need to. They're as important as birth. They're as important as love, and like we should be bringing them out into the open. And I think that people would, we would be a lot less damaged by changing the ways in which we hold grief and death in public. So thanks a lot.
Absolutely, thank you for that.
Thank you all. Does anyone in the group want to share anything that's coming up? And it's totally okay not to. You can either raise your hand or you can just come off mute and share if you have something or a question or anything. I did have honestly one question for Nefertiti that came up for me that I would love to just ask you. You talked about when in college when you had to drop out of college, and that this feeling that you had in your body that was this palpable feeling of grief. And I'm just wondering if you'd be willing to kind of share like a little bit more about that feeling, or like what that was like actually what, because I think in our culture people talk about it, but it's not necessarily normalized, or like everyone has their own experience, but it's like, what are we actually talking about? And I just wonder if you'd be willing to describe kind of what it was like.
It literally, for me, and I know everyone is different, but I just felt heavy. Like it felt like literally something was sitting on my chest, and like my heart was just covered in whatever it was. And it's like for me, losing my grandfather, it was sort of like I experienced disenfranchised grief because he was 90. So people were like, oh, you know, he lived a great life. You know, why are you so sad about it? And they didn't realize that he really was like my father. We saw each other every single day. I literally I got an apartment across the street from him so that I could see him every day. Like we were like best friends, and we talked about death a lot. We knew when he passed away everything what I was supposed to do, but it still was like once he was physically gone, it just was like this pain I felt in my heart. And it was like I didn't feel it lifted until I got into like meditation and things. Like what's interesting is that I was in college for mortuary science. And when I dropped out, I didn't know anything about death doula work. I didn't know anything about alternative death care. But again, it's still, you know, it really is in our cultures, but I didn't know anything about that. So I thought, you know, the death care work was just out of, it wasn't going to happen for me. I blamed it on grief. I was like, you know, I just feel so heavy. My heart is just, you know, not whole anymore. And many years later, I'd say maybe like 10, 15 years later, almost, I found Alua Arthur somehow on YouTube, and you know, took the course, and I was like, oh, death doula work, this is exactly for me. And I'm glad this happened, because it's like, even though as hard as grief can still be for me when it comes to my grandfather, it's like his death triggered something for me to be able to be here today. I wouldn't be here today. I would probably be a mortician in Detroit, Michigan. That's where I was in college. And now it's just, it changed for me. But I say all that to say the feeling was like a heavy, heavy feeling. And I still experience it sometimes when I get a trigger, maybe. But again, I have to do my breath work and tap into that, and just the science of it all, y'all. When you tap into how meditation can heal you, and even for your, not even just your physical body, but your mind and your spirit, if you know you believe in that thing. But it's really powerful. So
Amazing. Thank you so much for that share, and for you know, being willing to open up about that, because I think, yeah, I think people just gloss over what we mean when we talk about, oh, I'm grieving. It's like, oh, okay, you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
but when it's not happening to you. And Zubin, do you want to share anything about what we're working on at Reimagine before we, as a way to kind of close out this?
Sure. Yeah, we're building well, it's a big new direction for Reimagine. We're working on a new, and Brad and I like to think of it as like a new paradigm of social media that's focused on healing, growth, integration, really taking the hard things in life, our grief, our pain, our adversities, no matter how big or small, but really using that as a catalyst into growth and transformation. And really, like, a big part of this is into art and creativity and poetry and music, and showcasing that to the world. You know, we're building this platform. It's all based on the science of post-traumatic growth. And we want people to, these are the kinds of stories we want people to be exposed to and see what the actual truth is, where they come from. You know, the beautiful poetry we heard today, and like the painful sparks to that work, are really important part of the stories of our each of our journeys here on this time on Earth. And so, yeah, it's truly a reimagining of social media and how we can hold space for each other in these digital spaces. And you know, I like to say, I mean, we see it. I mean, the tech industry, I always say, it's collapsing under the weight of its own greed. But there's an opportunity to build things back better, to really think about how we can use the technology that's available, really like build it consciously from the beginning, before it's too late, before the business models and everything kind of dictates the direction of the product or business. So it's really exciting. We're getting close to testing with our first group of users. And we'll probably send out a call to people on our email list. People who want to sign up for this to try out the platform. We'd love your feedback. And we want people to navigate these journeys on the platform, different variety and different various growth journeys, growth pathways. So there's a lot of potential, very exciting. It's, you know, Brad and I are both from the Bay Area, and we've seen the tech industry where it was, where it's been, where it's coming, and where it's going. And we really feel like there's a need at this time for technology platforms that really promote human creativity as core to our purpose for being here. So, yeah, it's definitely this creation, my work creating and designing. It's definitely my purpose, and so grateful to have discovered that and excited to show it to you all.
And I think what we've seen at Reimagine, you know, there's this term in the medical space called comorbidities, that you know, different physical symptoms emerge together. And I think through the pandemic, you know, we first talked about just mortality and death, but as we've gone through this process of hosting these 3,000 events, you know, we've seen when we went to that AAPI Vigil or space for the Asian American Pacific Islander community the other day, talking about grief. It was about death loss, but it's also about racism. It's also about financial loss. It's also about intergenerational trauma. All these things come up when we're dealing with loss. It's like, it's not just when we try to treat these things as very separate parts of life, when in fact it's all part of life. And so what we're trying to create is a place for people to be able to share all of that and kind of work through all of that and create the scaffolding where we share our journeys, because sharing our journeys with others can help other people learn what that journey can be like for them. Even the question, you know, Nefertiti didn't even understand what your grief was like. You know what I mean? It's like that can normalize my own feelings. And you know, we keep these things in the shadows. So if we can kind of expose ourselves to each other's journeys, but orient our journeys toward transmuting and channeling our grief and pain into poetry, into service, into action, doesn't mean we don't sit with our pain and grieve and mourn. Those are important as well. But how do we do it in a healthy and expansive way? That's kind of what we're thinking about, because you can't go back to the same place you were before. There's no going back to that same normal. So what is this new normal that we can create for ourselves? And can that new normal be inspired and be rife with possibility? And so, you know, you're all here, just a really big part of it. I'm just taking time with this kind of smaller community that we have in this call today, just to share a little bit about this, because we haven't been talking about it yet, but want to just, you know, start lighting a little spark within our Reimagine community for those of you who are here, to just let you know a little bit about what you've inspired in all of us, and all of your journeys. And you know, we've seen these we call these gateway experiences, events that open up a conversation. But the question we've had at Reimagine, then what? You know, where do you go? Where do people go? They come and they open up a conversation, which is so important because people are afraid to talk about this at all. But then what? And how do we create the scaffolding for people, for all of us really, to share our stories and to, you know, heal ourselves and heal the world? And the fact is, those two ideas actually are symbiotic. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you to Andy. Thank you to Sophie and Eileen and Nefertiti and Zubin and Nicole and Michelle and Andrea and Nancy and our beautiful Alter and Marcella and S. Holland and Huda and Kent Shu. So good to see you, Kent Shu, and Heidi. So great to see you. And then 617, big shout out to the 617. Thank you so much. What a wonderful space, and I look forward to being with all of you. We look forward to being together again, where we can, you know, face death and celebrate life as a community. So have a great evening.